Indiana, the 19th government admitted to the Union in 1816, is an industrialized state with a soul based on a rural agrarian economy. Indiana has 41 miles of shoreline along Lake Michigan, several miles of which contain one of the world's great industrial centers, producing nearly 25% of America's steel, along with numerous other products. The remainder, a mix of dunes, beach, bog, forest, and wetlands. To preserve the unique Indiana dunes and surrounding shoreline, nearly 18,000 acres of national and state park were set aside in 1925. The two parks protect over 18 miles of Indiana's Lake Michigan shoreline. Henry Cowles, the father of ecology, did his studies of succession here in the early 1900s. As a result, the Indiana dunes are considered the birthplace of ecology. The most significant landmark along the Lake Michigan shore and its largest sand dune, 123-foot tall Mount Baldy. This giant mound of sand actually moves south at a rate of 4 to 5 feet each year, burying everything in its path. The climb to the top may be what inspired poet Carl Sandburg to write, "The dunes are to the Midwest what the Grand Canyon is to Arizona and the Yosemite is to California. They constitute a signature of time and eternity." The northern third of Indiana is a vast expanse of flat farmland devoted for the most part to corn, popcorn. This is the popcorn capital of the world. More than 254 million pounds of one of America's most popular snacks are grown here. In this region lives the third largest population of Amish, a very closely knit religious group of German-Swiss ancestry. Publicly, they're most distinguished by their transportation. Eschewing motorized wheels, they travel by horse and buggy or bicycle. Traditionally, Amish life centers around low-tech farming with horse-drawn implements. On Tuesday and Wednesday in Shipshewana, a local Amish town, the auction and flea market draws thousands from surrounding communities and states. An entire industry of restaurants, inns, and hotels cater to tourists who are here to enjoy not only the bizarre and varied flea market items, but exposure to the region's large Amish population. The auction barn is where animals from local farms are bought and sold, and what brings most of the Amish to town. At the flea market, you can buy just about anything, from old golf clubs to birdhouses.
Oh, we got chests and cupboards, and we got a mannequin. Everybody needs a mannequin. We got a bike. Everybody needs a bike. It's just for ourselves, really, yeah.
Really?
Just for the house and for the cottage.
Indiana is the RV capital of the world. More than 50% of the world's $14 billion RV revenues come from the region near Elkhart. The workforce, local Amishmen, who because of high land prices and difficulty in making ends meet in low-tech farming, have made the transition to local RV factories with their high-quality craftsmanship and work ethic. It's not unusual to see Amish buggies and bicycles parked outside a plant making modern RVs.
As early as 1949, Indiana, and specifically the Elkhart area where we are, was being described as the trailer capital of the world. The industry grew here in Indiana As World War II veterans started to raise families and look for inexpensive ways to travel and have vacation, they began hooking a trailer behind their car and taking off to live. And it just has grown exponentially since then, till today there are millions of people vacationing in their own little box on wheels, and hundreds of thousands who live full-time in their home on the road. What we have here in this museum today is a collection of 26 vintage RVs, beginning with the recognized oldest RV in the world, a trailer produced in 1913, and basically telling the evolution from that first steel and oilcloth covered tent up until the time of the production of the first Winnebago motorhomes in the mid-60s. This early chassis mount motorhome shows the evolution from pickup mounted slide-in campers as they grew, became mounted directly to the chassis of a pickup and evolved into today's Type C motorhomes. This tent trailer is a very early example of the products of the Jayco company. It actually is the 40th unit that they produced when they started production, and shows how much fun a family can have camping in the wilderness. This small tent trailer is designed to sleep 8. This 1940 Redmond New Moon trailer is a very interesting story. The Boatman family purchased this unit for full-time living in 1940 and lived in it until Mom died in 1988, 48 years later. In their 48 years of living in here, the Boatmans actually changed nothing from the original. It still has only one cold water tap. The same flooring and countertops that were there when it was purchased in 1940 are there. And the cook stove still burns gasoline as its fuel for cooking. This little Ranger tent trailer from 1954 is actually the very first RV ever to use the expression slide out for an expandable bed. This 1934 Covered Wagon brand trailer is really a demonstration of state-of-the-art of the middle 30s. It's a masonite exterior, but the interior is totally mahogany, walls, ceilings, cabinetry, and everything. It has leaded glass china closets, a built-in secretary with an etched mirror, and a tiled bathroom. This late 60s slide-in truck camper unit is a demonstration of the larger truck campers that were being produced in the late 60s and early 70s. This carries an 11-foot box to slide into an 8-foot pickup bed. This 1967 Winnebago motorhome is the start of the modern era. It was the first of the units that moved from the custom-made, very expensive motorhomes for the very rich to the assembly line produced cookie cutter type motorhomes that made them affordable to the average family. This original unit was kind of some mistakes made by Winnebago when they first started out. This unit's produced on a 6-cylinder, single rear-wheeled chassis, which didn't work very well and was changed partway through the first year to a V8 powered chassis. There's a very rich history. A whole lot of companies have come and gone and changed to other things. This Wayne Touring Company later became the Wayne School Bus Manufacturing, and thousands of their units carry kids to school. The Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz movie, The Long, Long Trailer, put out in 1954, was a major boon in marketing and promotion for the RV industry. even though the trailer that they pulled in the movie was actually designed to be a home and not a travel trailer. This thing that we call RVing today began with people like Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett, the vagabonds who took off through the wilderness on their own. And worldwide with the gypsies in their caravans pulled by horses throughout Europe. It was all the same, the enjoyment of our surroundings, the enjoyment of nature, the urge to explore and to travel on. We're doing that 200 years later in luxury houses that we drive down the road. But it all started with these little boxes that we display in this museum.
Indiana, and specifically Indianapolis, is the crossroads of America. More major highways intersect in Indiana than anywhere else in America. The capital of Indiana, perhaps the entire state, is most famous for its Memorial Day Indy 500 race. Begun May 30th, 1911, it was the first long-distance auto race in America. Indianapolis is a beautiful city that has survived urban flight to the suburbs with grace and style. White River State Park is an open, manicured green space in the city. The front lawn, if you will, for NCAA headquarters and its Hall of Champions. Local knowledge says basketball is the king of sports in Indiana. Along the Ohio River, Indiana's southern boundary, many towns turned their backs on the river that in most cases was their reason for being. Fortunately, in the late 20th century, residents began to realize their waterfront potential.
We are in the southwest corner of Indiana. This, looking out here, is the Ohio River, and it is a boundary between us and Kentucky. So you cross the bridge, you're in Kentucky, but if you also travel about 30 miles west, you're in Illinois. So we call this the tri-state area. The town is an old river town. A lot of industry and a lot of wealth. Obviously, when you look around and see a lot of these beautiful old Victorian homes in the late 1800s. So it is grown up commercially around this river. And for a lot of years, this river was kind of ignored. We kind of turned our back to it. And it's been probably in about the past 10 to 15 years, this community has realized it's probably the best resource that we have. And we've totally redone our riverfront area. And as we have people traveling up and down the river, they always tell us that it's probably one of the most beautiful riverfronts that they see as they travel.
Evansville's Four Freedoms Monument was part of this community's renaissance.
When you visit the monument, there are the four pillars of the freedoms that we've recognized, and I think were really called to our attention during World War II. But there's also a pillar for every state in the Union, and it gives a little bit of history of that state and when it came into the Union. So I always think that's a wonderful thing to go down there. I've walked it many times. Every time I do it, I see something different I didn't see before, and it's a great thing for people of all ages to come and just enjoy and remember that part of history.
Upriver just a bit, Angel Mound's historical site.
This is the world-famous Angel site, Middle Mississippian site, occupied between the years 1100 and 1450 roughly. We know by 1450 it was pretty well abandoned. Mississippian culture flourished up and down the Mississippi Valley. This is probably one of the farthest eastern locations for the Mississippian culture. And we had about 3,000 people living here on a little over 100 acres for about 350 years. And Mississippian culture is basically, they build mounds of status. These are more likely truncated pyramids, or pyramids with the top cut off. And then they build structures on top that elevate the elite, or those who thought they were elite. And 90% of the community would have lived out off of the mounds. But it was a very large community, largest in the state of Indiana.
We are in the second of 3 years of archaeological excavation here, very small scale excavations that are meant to help the staff here at Angel Mound's National Historic Site interpret in greater detail what went on here between about 1100 and about 1400 AD. Over the last 5 years, we have taken a fine scale magnetometry map of this entire site. 3.6 million points, measured magnetic moment at each of those points, deflections in the Earth's magnetic field. So basically the gross features, which are not visible on the surface, houses, large pits, things like that, are visible to the magnetometer. We have chosen 3 units in which to do archaeology that will better interpret the site, but the whole project is to better preserve the site.
If it wasn't for the archaeology, we would know very little about this site, other than we've got some big humps of dirt out back. Archaeology, starts to polish up what we have and give us much more detail on what actually happened here.
Further upriver in Tell City, this business began in 1858, about the same time the town was founded.
This is known as Tell City Pretzel Company, and we make hand-twisted pretzels here. The recipe and everything is unique. Also, it's got to be watched, and needs that personal attention with the temperatures and how we dry the pretzel and how we salt the pretzel. All looks antiquated and all looks elementary, but there's more to it than that, believe me. We'll always hand twist pretzels. That's our intention. We'll always want to give that a hand twist because it is a unique thing. So there's just a few companies that still do this sort of thing, and we'd like to stay with that tradition. Bettinger potato chips started in 1917, and they're kettle-cooked chips. We cook them in batches, and then we want to sort. We go hand sort them to make sure that we get only the select potato. We hand season the chips, as you'll see. And we have some of our machinery is still kind of old, but that's all part of our tradition. And I bought a new potato peeler when we bought the place. Put it in here. The girls were very unhappy with it. It didn't seem like it did it like they wanted to, so I was forced to put the old potato peeler back in, and that's why we have a smiley face. They painted a smiley face on it, so they was happy to have it back. So.
In Rising Sun, another Ohio river town which has reclaimed its waterfront.
The legend has it that John James and his family were traveling down the Ohio River, and they were attracted to the height of the bank here and thought it would be a safe place from Indians and I guess animals to spend the night. And when they woke up the next morning, the sun was shining very brightly to the east, and they said that this is the place where they would like to settle, and legend has it, that's how they got the Rising Sun.
In a store along Main Street, a most unique business.
What makes a great harp design is not one thing. It's 1,000 little things, and it's attention to all those tiny, tiny, tiny details. Whether the harp balances properly when it's pulled back into the player, how the bracing pattern inside supports the instrument, and also a good basic understanding of physics. So it's all of that and a little magic.
If there's not a very good design, no matter what you do to it, it's not going to make a good instrument. The wood is probably less than 10%, or the materials are less than 10% of the instrument. You have to have an absolutely great design, and you have to have an artist who knows how to take that design and make it work.
Harps border right on the edge of wanting to explode. This harp will have about 1,200 pounds of string pressure on the soundboard. That's a horse. So the way that you have to disperse energy through that harp, distribute energy through that harp so that you don't have toothpicks is incredibly tricky. And understanding the physics and the math and then rendering that with an excellence in a level of craft is the trick.
When I build and design something, I'm not sure what I'm really doing sometimes. I just use my common sense and it works really, really well. And to me, it just seems like it takes common sense, but I've been told by everyone else that it's not common sense. For some reason, I just seem to have a natural knack to tweak this or tweak that or use this material, and it happens.
Indiana's 4.5 million acres of hardwood forests are an important agricultural commodity here, representing over 47,000 jobs, $1.5 billion in wages alone. Though most hardwood forests rejuvenate themselves, over 1 million hardwood trees were planted last year to supplement that natural growth. Imagination and foresight are the qualities that lead many businesses to success. Add environmental and community responsibility, and you have the family business of Cutter Woodworks in Starlight.
This is our main Cutter Woodworking manufacturing plant. This plant really sees the wood after it's gone through a couple of processes. It's been harvested, it's gone through the sawing process, it's gone through the drying process in our kilns, and that's when it's brought into this building. It's really unusable lumber, if you will. From this stage, it's brought in and it's planed down to a uniform thickness. From there, it moves down a conveyor belt where it goes to one of 2 computerized rip saws. That's the great thing about the evolution of this process, is now we're starting to see some computer automation built into the process. The computer actually takes digital pictures of every single board that comes in the building. It gives us a running inventory of every single board coming through the plant. The other thing that it does is it takes that digital shot and transfers it to the rip saw. And it tells the rip saw exactly where to cut that board. So you may have some defects in the board that computer can tell the rip saw exactly where to cut it to get rid of those unusable defects. After it moves down there, it comes down the long conveyor system where all of those boards are individually inspected, hand inspected. It allows us to take out any unacceptable defects in the board. What you end up with are a lot of shorter boards. What this process does is etch each of the ends of the boards like fingers, and then we push the boards back together and glue them back together, and what you end up with is a long, usable, defect-free piece of board again. That allows us then to manufacture through the rest of the process, through the milling process, the profiling process. And like I said earlier, these are what we term paint-grade quality. You're going to be painting over top of these, typically hiding any seams or the various shades that you'll see in these blank boards. See, normally after we have cut the unusable defects out of it, this wood normally wouldn't be good for a lot. It would otherwise be scrap. What we found the ability to do through this finger joining process is etch those parallel cuts in the end, glue the boards back together, and then cut them to a desired length, so you end up with a long, clean, usable board once again. Again, it minimizes the waste and maximizes the yield of each of the boards that we bring in.
Obviously, we consume quite a bit of lumber, and growing up, Mom and Dad always taught us that we should have as much responsibility for the product and the resource there as we do in all aspects of the company on it. A few years back, we decided that we wanted to do some additional involvement in the timber management end of it and open up the Forest Discovery Center. What we're trying to do is educate the general public on what we feel is the proper timber management for longevity of the forest, and that's through sustainable forestry.
What we really want to show is that through proper forest management, that you can not only get all of those environmental benefits out of it, but you can also get those thousands and thousands of products that we get from trees, things like hardwood flooring, crown moldings, doors, furniture components, cabinet components, things that typically people don't think of when they think of trees and forests.
In Fishers, near Indianapolis, an exciting and comprehensive living history museum at Conner Prairie.
Well, this group is a group that's here for a program called Weekend on the Farm. That's an opportunity that we have for guests to actually spend the night and 2 days at Liberty Corner, our 1886 area. So you come in, you get your own character, just like our costumed interpreters, for the weekend, and you get to help with chores, you cook on the wood stove, you go to the school in 1886. Whatever is going on is appropriate for the season. They may be planting potatoes today. We've got a nice day for gardening. It may be corn picking. They may get a chance to drive our horses. The neighbors come by to visit in the evening, and of course, since there's no flush toilets in 1886, they're using the privy at night. Everything is appropriate for that time period. Well, we've got about 900 acres altogether, but about 200 acres within our historic areas. 3 different areas, 1886, 1836, and 1816. Then we have our historic William Conner house, the only house that's original to the property. All the other buildings were brought in from across Indiana. And our passport area, which focuses on hands-on opportunities. About 42 interpreters every day within all those areas, both in costume in first person as well as in modern clothes that can answer any kind of questions that you've got.
This is 1836. I'm Peter Dale, and this is Dr. Campbell's home, and part of my chores is cutting the grass. I also cut wood, and I take care of the garden, and once it gets dry enough, I'm going to turn over the garden, finish turning over the garden so we can plant food out there.
Prairie Town, you've got everything from the very wealthy appearing doctor who is the town founder down to the potters and the blacksmiths and other tradesmen that are in the area. We've got an inn in town, so you get travelers that come through too and represent views that we might not necessarily have in a small town in Indiana, but you see the outsider view of the world in 1836 as well.
We start school in December. We'll go 3 months, December, January, and February, 6 days a week, Monday through and including Saturday, from 7 o'clock to 4 o'clock, which is 9 hours. The parents will pay me, or you will pay me, $2.40 for that term, 3 cents a day. I'll take coin, I'll take credit store, I'll take chickens, apples, eggs, cheese. It's in kind. It's a loud school also. We do our lessons standing up out loud. I will teach them to read, write, spell, geography, mathematics, civics, and a little bit of ancient history.
Yeah, folks will come, maybe from about 3 miles away to get work done here in the shop. When folks ask us to make things, it's generally things for the home. We don't make so much tools like woodworking tools or that sort of thing, but fireplace equipment and kitchen utensils and maybe door hardware and that sort of thing. But
I love to educate people and help them learn. And especially a museum like this, we get to be outside all the time and working with animals and working with people, and it's just a great place to be.
In rural southern Indiana, most farmers are occupied with raising a variety of grains, wheat, barley, rye, but at Charles Schieffer's farm, a different crop, limestone sculptures. Over 160 of them from 3 to 12 feet tall, scattered about his 10-acre farm.
I've been sculpting full-time since 1974. That's all I've done since, well, the last about 30-some years. And I still work every day, carving, and that's what I'm going to do. I've been very fortunate to find something that I really like to do, and I'm doing it. But the air hammer, this is the secret to the whole thing. In fact, what you can do with the air hammer. And it's like, wow, look at that!
At 80 years old, he's as energetic as he's ever been. This is a one-man show of extraordinary proportions. He does all the work alone, using winches, his tractor, and a lot of muscle to move his giant sculptures in place.
You can do a face in about 10-15 minutes, but we'll put faces all over here. When I'm done with this big face up here, there'll be faces all over. I'll turn the stone over. They've got a big boom here with a red power winch, I can pick it up, turn it over. So I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'll epoxy it to a great big stone, then make a big base for it. If you come out here next 2 months from now, it'll be sitting someplace. I do lots and lots of faces. Faces and faces. Here we have a double face. Faces in the crowd. 999 faces in the universe. All kinds of faces. 999 faces and faces and faces. Here we have a double face. Crowd. All kinds of faces. And I really like pregnant women. I like the whole feeling of that. I sell lots of pregnant ladies. This is called pushing for life. She's pushing the baby out. The baby is the negative. Everything here in the yard here, I move myself. I'm about the only stone sculptor that I know of who does moderate-sized pieces that can be moved, as well as doing little things. I mean, when I do an art show, this art show is at Broad Ripple, I'm the only stone man there. Nobody else does stone. So if anybody wants stone, hey, they're gonna have to buy it from me. You know, that's the way it's been for 35 years. Anybody wants stone, hey, Schiefer's the man that got it. This piece over here is one of my relatively new ones. It's only about 2 years old. This is called People Emerging from the Stone. Here we have I think the largest stone chess set in Indiana. And what I tell everybody, if you can afford to buy the chess set, the base is made out of concrete. If you can afford to buy the whole chess set, you can afford to pay someone to pick it up and move them. But they're not all that heavy. I did this down in Bedford in 1974. I painted the background black so that the figures jump out at you more, but it's just something that I felt like trying to do. Everything around here is things that I just feel like doing. And I make them, and I will probably never get into big museums because I don't do all of one thing. I mean, the way to get into museums is you find one thing, then that's all you do. You do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it, and somebody likes it. And people like my stuff, but the museum people don't like my stuff. College people don't like my stuff, and I don't worry about that. But right now I'm just going to sell what I have small, and I'm not going to make small stuff anymore. And I'm 80 years old, and I don't do a damn thing I don't feel like doing anymore. What I do is what I feel like doing. And I don't care where I sell anything, not anymore. I mean, I'm independent. The one down here is North American Waterbirds. I did that down in Bedford in 1973. That's the first relief panel I ever made. I've had some art people come out and say, well, you used the Egyptian perspective. What the hell is the Egyptian perspective? I usually have a dolphin, of course it sits real nice by my swimming pool. It's a heated pool. I start swimming in April, so I swim 4 times every day. First thing in the morning I go swimming, noontime for a swim, before dinner for a swim, then at 11 o'clock at night, last thing I do, I go for another swim. I exercise a lot. After the show last night, my girlfriend and I went ballroom dancing from 7 till 10:30. And we went home and danced some more.
This is the Academy of Model Aeronautics flying field in Muncie. Over 1,000 acres of playground for those who like to fly.
We've got a small engine up front. This happens to be a single-bladed propeller. There's a timer here which determines how long the engine runs. The engine is really basically just a source to bring it up. They're basically powered gliders. And there's a second function on the timer. When it gets to a 2-minute mark, this line pops and the tail goes up. And that gives the airplane a big swooping motion, and then it just sort of pancakes down. So we can keep it relatively on the field, hopefully most of the time.
We're having a contest for FAI free flight models. FAI stands, it's French Fédération Aéronautique Internationale, pardon my French. And there's an international class of models, and they're flown all over the world. And this contest is part of what we call the America's Cup competition, where people will try to gain points over the period of a year to see who's a top guy in a particular class. And the task for the models today is to try to get a 2-minute flight.
That's good.
Well, I did it when I was a kid. I started when I was a little bit older than he was, because my father was a modeler, and I did it very actively in my teenage years. Then from the age of 16 on, I kind of dropped out due to cars, girls, and other interests, and then I picked it up about 5 years ago, due to my older son getting me interested again in it. So now I'm back at it. Minute 20 seconds. Awesome. I'm gonna go chase it now. See if I can find it.
When I was 5 years old, which is when I started, aviation was glamorous. Okay, you got to remember, it wasn't like everybody was hopping in an airliner and flying across the country to see grandma and grandpa or anything like that. It was all very Howard Hughes and so forth, and so it was a thrill just to watch airplanes at that time, and used to go out to the local airports and watch them fly. And the bug bit, and I've been at it ever since.
What they do, they shoot them up in the air and then they just go, and it's whoever can stay up the longest. Then they climb on their motorcycles and go chase them down. I think they love that part more than they do the flying.
Here too, the National Model Aviation Museum, the world's most extensive collection of model airplanes.
There's about 10,400 artifacts in the museum on the records. Now, all the models you see in here are flying models. That's one of the criteria. A lot of people think that these are just to look at, but these were flying models. Of course, now they are museum pieces, so they'll never fly again, but we'll have them here for hopefully generations to come to see them. We have examples of almost every model airplane that has been made, especially the famous ones, from clear back in the early days of model aviation to today. As a matter of fact, one day I had a 92-year-old man standing here, and he had tears running down his face, and he said, I have built about every one of these airplanes. He says, I haven't seen them since I was a kid. And it was just so emotional for him, and I think that's what we really enjoy in here, is the fact that these people see planes they haven't seen since they were kids. For 50 cents worth of balsa, you can make an airplane, or we even make one out of a foam paper plate for kids. And all the way, any amount of money that anyone has, they can still enjoy modeling. There are so many different facets of model airplanes that you can go in at any part of the hobby and go in at the level you want. That was designed and built by Maynard Hill, and it flew from Newfoundland all the way to Ireland in one flight, 1,881.6 miles. It's the only flight that's ever been done across the Atlantic Ocean with a model airplane, because a model airplane cannot weigh, to be called a model airplane, it cannot weigh more than 5 kilograms. That's 11 pounds with the fuel. So that flew all that way on 1 gallon of fuel.
Yeah, some of the folks fly some enormous equipment out here. You know, 30, 40 pound weight, and wind like this won't affect them at all. But you get into some of these little guys like ours, and it can get really goofy up there. You spend 3 months building something, you don't want to see it turn into a pile of balsa sticks. We got him stuck in the hobby, I don't know, about 8, 9 years ago. He flew so nice, but he's such a builder. He builds, I fly. He used to fly so well, and now his talents are just the joy of seeing. I mean, his planes, you can let go of the stick and the plane will just fly straight. It's just the quality of buildmanship, his attention to detail. I don't have the patience for it. I'll put something up in the air, no problem, but to sit there and build something like that, he has the talent and the patience. You'll see some people that come out here with some equipment that you just dream of having someday, like any hobby. But the people that come out on this, I don't care if you're a farmer or a CEO over at Delphi.
You know, we're all the same out here. And we have a love for trying to fly something that we built and see if it works.
Ever since before Wilbur and Orville took flight, man has been obsessed with getting into the air.
It's not simple and easy, but it's something that everybody can achieve if they wish to. And we've only, out of roughly 3,000 students at 2,500, 3,000 students we had, there might have been 3 of them that could not grasp it, you know.
I was a paratrooper in military days, and I like to fly, and when I was introduced to it, Hop trained us to fly, well, I just stuck with it. I think that happens a lot with people with powered parachute. It's a lazy, easy, laid-back way of flying, and usually everybody that flies, they would like to learn and eventually, you know, fly their own self.
It's a very safe aircraft. I mean, I think that's what people who are afraid and they get into something that's open cockpit, so to speak, where you're right, the ground's right down here, kind of intimidating for some people. But we remind them you are on a parachute. People jump out of airplanes in parachutes, and as long as they listen to the training that HOPS gives them and intently, there just aren't problems. I mean, it's just a very safe way to fly. It gets to be a more of a relaxing thing than it is. At first, you're so excited you can't sleep at night. The first time you go up, but after you've flown 100 hours, now it's just flat fun. You go out and you relax and you fly around and you look at the deer and you look at all the wildlife and around here all the crops and things like that, and all the trash around everybody's houses and things like that. But I think more importantly, the thing that I'd want to stress is it's extremely safe.
Wind power is one of man's least expensive forms of energy. Tribute to that very first windmill in Kendallville, the Mid-America Windmill Museum.
We think it's pretty special because it's the first public windmill museum in the United States, and it's the only one now east of the Mississippi River. I think we opened with 6 windmills that we'd restored, and now we stand here 8 years later with 52 windmills and another 30 or so down in a warehouse downtown that we've got to repair yet and put up. The windmills out here go all the way from the early one, like the Daniel Halliday, which was all wood. That is everything but the pumping mechanism and the bearings and so forth. To today's mill, which is all steel. Today's windmill runs in a bath of oil, and you change the oil once a year, and you got a machine that'll last you, 20, 30 years. Take good care of it. There's 250,000 windmills operating every day in the United States, pumping mills, pumping water. It's not unusual for a ranch out on the highlands to have, a 18,000 acre ranch would have 20 or 25 windmills.
My ancestors also manufactured windmills in Springfield, Ohio. I think that history especially in this area, and windmills played a tremendous part in the development of our culture and our basically United States. And I think that we need to preserve this heritage for future generations as we progress with different sources of power. And the wind certainly was one of the most important powers that we had, and I think we still have it.
Here too, the annual Tri-State Memorial Day Bluegrass Festival.
It's all because of you, I know. Well, I can't go on this way, so why don't you tell me so?
We'll have somewhere around 500 campers here. We had about 125 a week ago on Sunday, and they come for the music and the campfire jams. Last night there was probably 12 or 13 jams around the grounds. I finally gave out at about 1:30 last night, and there was 4 within walking distance, easy walking distance of my trailer. Well, I think it's participation is what it is, that anyone can pick up a guitar or a banjo or whatever, and after some practice, learn to play. And they play common songs, a common format, not common songs necessarily, so that once you master the instrument and some of the basic songs, you can stand back in what we call the second tier and listen to some of the music and kind of play along with it, and then eventually you become the first tier, where you're the lead singer and the lead guitar player.
I think it's a level of the past. It's a music of the past that originated down in the hills, down south with a lot of people. And I'm from Michigan, so a lot of people came to Michigan for work, you know, back during the Depression and everything. And we're generations of Southern families that brought this with them from the mountains, and this is what we call bluegrass today. And it's a good family fun, which is clean.
In addition to workshops, jam sessions, and the entire camping festival experience, over 40 performances on stage by some of the best bluegrass groups in the country. The Crossroads of America brings together some of the finest, kindest people you'll ever meet. Thanks for watching Discoveries America, Indiana.